Yes, Dana, it's wonderful to see you. Welcome back to the White House, and welcome back to the podium.
Yeah, this is a different vantage point than I had before because I'm about this tall, and this moves up and down, right?
It does.
So they had to readjust it for you,
They did.
I'm sure. I got advice from Mike McCurry once.
Yeah.
He said that when you come down the ramp from the press office into the briefing room, that if you feel like you've got everything under control, that you should turn back around and go back to your office because there's something you've forgotten.
Yeah.
Is that true for you?
There is a tendency to lull yourself into complacency sometimes, and guarding against that and ensuring a rigorous preparation process is important. The thing that I do when I'm walking down the ramp is I actually try to walk slowly down the ramp. And what I find is that sometimes when I'm standing behind this podium and people are firing questions at me, my brain starts working really quickly and my mouth has a hard time catching up. So what I actually have found is that by walking slowly down the ramp on the way to the briefing room, it has a way of it even slows my mind down.
Do you do a pre-brief in your office where your staff fires questions at you?
I do, and we will spend a little time. I refer to it as batting practice. Let's do a little batting practice. You guys throw a couple my way, and I'll try to.
Well, you know sports,
them.
So you can use a metaphor like that. I used to give my snarkiest answers in the office so that I wouldn't say them here.
Yes, there is definitely. I spend a little time. Somebody will ask me a question, and I'll give an answer, and then I'll end it by saying I won't really say that.
Right, just so you don't give them a heart
attack.
What kind of career did you want when you were growing up?
Well, to keep the baseball theme running, I wanted to be a starting pitcher for the Kansas City Royals. There's no denying that, but I fell far short of that talent. That was obviously a childhood dream. As I got older, I don't think I really had a clear sense of what I wanted to do, and that's one of the things actually that makes this job so interesting to somebody like me is that in some ways I am a generalist, right? That there's no one area, there's no one thing that I was captivated by. I didn't want to be an architect or a doctor. There's always a sense that the world was a fascinating place, and there is no place that gives you better insight into the world than standing right here behind the podium and answering whatever questions are in the news that day and learning about far-flung places in the world, learning about different aspects of policy. And that's the thing I'm actually going to miss most about this job is this idea that the variety and the intellectual challenge and stimulation of it all is fascinating, and I don't think can be easily replicated.
I used to love that no matter who you wanted to talk to in the government, you could call and say, come over and tell me a little bit more about Israel or Iran or to pick a place, Tanzania, and they would answer your call.
That's true, and I have to admit, at the beginning, I felt a little guilty about it. Like, I know you're really busy with all this stuff. Do you mind coming over to talk to me? And next thing I know, 90 seconds later, they'd be standing outside the door of my office, eager to come sit down and spend as much time as I would like talking about the thing that they spent a lot of time working on. And it dawned on me that they actually cared what I have to say about the policy that they've dedicated their lives to.
Because it is a little bit of an isolated job. Right, because you are the only one that stands up here. And I think that's one of the reasons press secretaries have a good camaraderie is that you know what it's like. But it very much is a team effort, and the people that are all around the White House or in the government are there to support you and answer your call. Yeah.
Well, listen, one of the critical components to my success is actually just the White House spokespeople who work on my team.
Yeah.
These are the people who are keeping tabs on the news. These are the people who are regularly interacting with reporters on a daily basis. So it doesn't all fall to me to be aware of what's happening in the world. That I've got eyes and ears on the ground who are focused on specific policy areas. I benefit tremendously from both their preparation, but also their wisdom.
I had a rule with my team that if I was ever surprised by a question at a briefing, something had gone terribly wrong, and that they would be responsible. So in a way, we sort of over-prepared, but I don't think, in some ways, you can't really over-prepare for it.
No, you can't. You can't. And it's impossible to anticipate every single question that could possibly come up. And so I will say that where I rely on them, and I think this is a strategy that you use too, is you don't want to guess when you're standing up here, because you don't want to guess wrong. So I didn't see a lot of shame if somebody's asking me a question that I wasn't ready to answer, to just say, look, we're just going to have to follow up with you on that one. And having somebody on my team go back to them and say, look, this is the deal. That actually ends up being a strategy that preserves the integrity of the office, but it also ensures that people who are trying to report on these stories are getting the right answer.
So Andy Card was the chief of staff when I first started as the deputy, and one of the things he said is that it's really easy at the White House to get White House-itis, or to get a big head about working at the White House. And he really encouraged us to stay grounded. And I think that you've never come across as somebody with a big head in this job. And I wonder, what keeps you grounded? here in the White House?
That's a thought-provoking question. I think the thing that the fact that I never expected to work here, I think keeps me pretty grounded.
So,
That I've never felt a sense that somehow somebody owed it to me to have the opportunity to do this job. I never felt like I deserved the chance to do this job. And so that makes me fight for it a little bit.
I loved being the deputy, being behind the scenes. You were the deputy for a long time, and we almost had the same trajectory in terms of taking over in the second term of the last 2 years.
That's right.
I always tell people they should always take the deputy job. Were you happy being the deputy, or did you ever really think that you would be the press secretary?
At the beginning, I was very happy. And, I was a deputy for 5 years.
Right.
And I liked that job.
Yeah.
And it did give me a sense that there was a lot that I could see. But I look at the more that I watched my predecessors do this job, and I say this with all due respect to them because I think they were excellent at this job too, both Robert Gibbs and Jay Carney. But the more that I watched them, the more that I participated and helped lead preparation sessions for them, the more I sat on the side at their briefings, the more I got a sense of, I think I could do that. I think I'd be pretty good at doing that.
The other reason I liked being the deputy is that, and I tell people to be the deputy if they get a chance, whether in this job or in any other profession, is that that's when you get to know the boss really well, because you're working holidays, weekends, evenings, and it's a little bit more of a relaxed atmosphere, and you get to know them personally.
Yeah.
And I feel like you and President Obama have a good personal relationship from the beginning. Is that how you see it?
That certainly is true, that I spent a lot of time, and this was particularly true during the president's re-election campaign in 2012, that I was the principal deputy press secretary. And so there are a lot of campaign trips on weekends, and if we had late night returns, that often would be my responsibility. And that makes a lot of sense, that if the president's traveling late the night before, somebody else should do the trip, come back late, so that the next person can be fresh standing behind the podium at the briefing. And so I did spend a lot of time with the president on the road, and that did give me an opportunity to build a relationship with him that serves me very well here. And I think this is your experience too. That you develop some instincts about what he's likely to care about, and those instincts get to be...
and you get to have a little bit of... and you can laugh about things.
Exactly.
I remember my first trip on Marine One that I did on my own. I was so nervous, and we went to the Boy Scouts Jamboree, and on the way back, the president had a boxed lunch that the White House mess had made for him, and it was peanut butter and honey sandwiches. And he handed me one. He said, "Would you like one?" And I said, "Oh, no, sir, it's okay." And he said, "Come on." And so, my first experience really with him was sharing peanut butter and honey sandwiches, and sun chips is what he really preferred.
That sounds all right.
So you became a father while you were White House press secretary, something I did not become. I don't have children, so I wonder what it was like, how much that changed your life, and what it was like when you introduced your son, Walker, to President Obama.
Yeah. Well, I was, my son was born about 2 months after I got this job. So there were a lot of changes happening in my life all at the same time. And I actually still remember vividly when President Obama offered me this job. I was sitting in my office, and my wife, who was working at the Treasury Department at the time, had gone home early to be there for the air conditioning repairman who was coming to our house to repair the air conditioning in the house that we had just purchased.
Okay.
And so I'm sitting in my office, and the president's assistant comes down and says, "The president would like to see you." And I stand up at my desk and start to walk out the door of my office, and his assistant says, "You might want to bring your jacket." So I grabbed my jacket, went to the Oval Office, and had a nice half-hour conversation with the president where he offered me the job. And it was I was so excited and humbled with the opportunity. I came back and saw that I had 4 missed calls from my wife on my phone. And I quickly called her back as soon as I could, and I said, "Sweetheart, I'm really sorry that I missed your call, but I have the best possible excuse for having missed your call," and told her that I'd been offered the job. So the interplay between this job and my personal life is something that everybody has to deal with. And look, having my son, a little over 2 years ago, everybody says, every parent, regardless of what their profession is, says that having children changes your perspective on life and on the world. And there's no doubt that that's true. And some of the stories that we end up talking about here that are tragedies, that are sad, I think give you a different perspective.
As a dad.
Some of the examples of some of the stories that we've read about refugees, fleeing their homes in Syria, and to imagine a father like me who is packing up his wife and his child to go and try and bring them some measure of comfort and to make them safe is you have a different perspective on that when you've got a wife and a child that you feel that you love and that you feel responsible for caring for.
Did you have a way of separating work from home, or was it pretty all encompassing? I know it was for me, pretty all encompassing, and Peter was pretty understanding about that, but it was hard to switch off.
It is hard to switch off. My wife used to work in the administration, so she has some sense of how challenging it is, and so she's the most patient, selfless, generous person in the world. So she's very understanding about that. I think the other thing that helps is that there's a culture around here, from President Obama on down, that encourages people to be sure they're taking the time that they need to fulfill their obligations
and
at
to
home.
refresh.
And so it's not uncommon for me to. One of the goals that I set for myself was, after my son was born, was to choose one day a week where I would get home before he went to bed. Because otherwise... Doable. Most weeks, almost every week, in fact, I've succeeded in doing that. Otherwise, this is a schedule you're familiar with. I leave the house before he wakes up, and I don't get home until long after he's gone to bed. And so being intentional about choosing one work day where I get home and at least just be around to help participate in the bedtime ritual to put him to bed was really grounding. But there were times where the White House Chief of Staff would call me while I'm changing the diaper or applying the lotion, and I just take out the phone and email Dennis and say, I'm just putting the baby to bed. Can I call you in 45 minutes?
The technology has helped.
It helps immensely.
Right. I remember one Thanksgiving, the Wednesday night before, I think the Mumbai bombings in India happened on the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving one year, and we were supposed to host Thanksgiving at my house, and I remember calling Peter and like, you're going to have to cook this dinner on your own, and he did. We only have a few minutes left here, so I thought I'd ask you, might be hard to answer this question, but because you never thought you would be here, do you know what you want to do after you leave? I know one thing I wanted to do was browse at Target. That's like the only thing I thought that I wanted to do. And being on this book tour, I go to Barnes & Noble and I look around like, oh, I just want to look around for a while and have a moment. What is it that you really want to do? I'm assuming it has to do with spending more time with your son.
Spending more time at home is a given. And having the opportunity to do more of that is something that I am genuinely looking forward to, and I'm looking forward. And I will certainly carve out the time to do that. There are some other things, one of the things that I want to do is actually read a book that doesn't have anything to do with politics.
Oh, I have a good one to recommend.
That's what I've heard.
It's about a dog. His name is
Jasper. May have a little politics involved. That, and then the other aspiration that I have is to work on my golf swing. So I play a little golf. I'm not particularly good right now, but it's the kind of thing that when you are on the golf course and you are trying to put together a good round, it's hard for anything else to intrude in your mental space. And so spending a little time working on my golf swing is something that I definitely aspire to.
So my last question before I let you go, in these last 45 days, do the briefings get easier, or does it just never let up?
It doesn't really let up. There's always something. And look, that's the benefit of this process. And that's why this process is so important. And it says something really important to the American people and to their advocates in the press corps, that the President of the United States is willing to designate someone, a senior member of his team, to face the music and to be accountable and to learn what's happening in the administration and be honest and be accountable and answer questions and help people understand exactly what the President's thinking. And that give and take is really important. It's symbolic, I would acknowledge.
Yeah.
But that's in some ways, sort of given how complicated and cluttered our news environment is, it's never been more important.
And you have to advocate for them as well.
That's true. That's one of the unique roles of the press secretary is you know who's signing your paychecks, and you better not forget that. But at the same time, somebody needs to be an advocate for them.
Yeah.
And reporters are typically in a position where it's their responsibility to hold the administration to account and to ask for more access and transparency. So there needs to be somebody on the receiving end of that who is sympathetic to their cause. It doesn't mean you agree with them all the time, because I surely don't. But somebody who's willing to recognize the important role that they play in our democracy and serve as an internal advocate for them is a really valuable role. And
they're never satisfied.
No, but the thing that I say is the day that they are satisfied is the day they stop doing their job.
That's right. That's right. All right. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thanks, Dana.